Hi there, and welcome to the DT Practice YouTube channel. Today, we're going to discuss the read and complete question type. We know that the read and complete questions fall under comprehension. This makes them similar to the reading choices and interactive reading tasks we've previously covered, all of which are important objective question types. It's recommended to focus on practicing these types of questions frequently during your study sessions. Now, let's introduce the question type. First, let's take a look at the interface. By observing the layout, we can see that read and complete questions are timed at 3 minutes. These questions present a short text with some missing words. The text includes a title, complete opening and closing sentences, and some sentences in the middle with blanks. The task is to fill in the missing words from the text. In each test, you'll encounter 3 to 6 read and complete questions. The requirement is straightforward: fill in the missing words. However, it's not as simple as it seems. There are several reasons for this. First, the topics vary widely, ranging from dialogues and expository writing to argumentative essays and scientific articles. Additionally, the missing words must be filled in as part of the text, so spelling is crucial. This means that a broad vocabulary and strong reading skills are essential. Furthermore, this is also a reading comprehension task. Many times, you will need to rely on the context and background of the text to fill in the blanks, which tests your ability to understand sentences and the overall passage. In some cases, your knowledge of grammar and syntax will provide useful clues for completing the task. These aspects are also tested. So, how should you approach the read and complete questions? Let's look at some strategies. As we mentioned earlier, these questions are comprehension-based, so understanding the context is key. Don't rush to fill in the first blank right away after seeing the question. This approach can lower your accuracy. The correct way is to read through the entire passage first to get a general understanding of the content before attempting to fill in the blanks. When tackling read and complete questions, it's important to focus on the full text, especially the title, complete sentences, and the overall structure, tense, and tone of the passage. While answering, don't just focus on the blank and the nearby words. Instead, consider the entire sentence or even the whole passage to gather clues or find the correct answer. Now, let's take a look at the following example question. First, we'll start with the title, "A Strong but Limited Job Candidate." So, what does that mean? It suggests that the interviewee may excel in certain areas and stand out, but also has some shortcomings. This is just our initial interpretation based on the title. Now, let's check if the content of the passage aligns with this assumption. Let's move on to the first sentence. In some ways, she is a strong candidate for a position with our company. This means that in certain aspects, she is a strong contender for the role at our company. Now, let's look at the closing sentence. This is something she can work on once she joins our team. Once she joins the team, she can focus on improving something. We need to figure out what this something refers to. Moving on to the body of the text, it seems to focus on 2 parts: the candidate's strengths and the areas where she can improve. The something in the closing sentence likely refers to the areas that need improvement. Through contextual analysis, we've developed a fairly good understanding of the question. Now, let's fill in these missing words together. The first word starts with tech. We might think it's related to technology, as tech itself is an informal term for technology. Could it be technology? The number of spaces doesn't fit, right? We only have 5 spaces to fill, meaning we can only fit 5 letters. The next word is knowledge, a noun, so the tech word before it is likely an adjective modifying knowledge, forming a noun phrase. An adjective starting with tech, technological, is too long, but what about technical? That fits perfectly. This word can mean both technical and professional, so technical knowledge works well here. Moving on, the second word, something well, starts with I and has 2 letters. Looking at the whole sentence, it should be a simple sentence, not very long, probably describing some of the candidate's strengths. We've already analyzed that this text has 2 parts, discussing the candidate's strengths and limitations. This should be a subject-verb complement structure, so the I word is likely the verb is. Since we're describing strengths, there should be a comparison. Who would a candidate be compared to? Possibly other interviewees, right? But we notice the text doesn't mention other candidates. We see an important word, current, meaning present or now. Could it be referring to their colleagues? Possibly. We see a word starting with work that refers to people. We might first think of workers, but there are more spaces. Colleagues can be co-workers or workmates, but we need a word starting with work. It should be workmate, but there are 5 spaces, right? So we add an S, workmates, which fits perfectly. For the space before current, we need a 3-letter word starting with O. Do we need to spend time thinking about it? I wouldn't, because it's in the text. Look at the last sentence. What's before team? Or isn't that perfect? A 3-letter word starting with O. We can fill it right in. Is it common for words to be filled in from the original text? Actually, it's quite common. So I remind students again, read first, then fill in the blanks. Remember these 6 words. Now we're left with the words before and after of. The word starting with a should be ahead. We're describing strengths, so consider the phrase be ahead of meaning to be in front, surpass, or lead. The word starting with M after of should be most, meaning the majority. So our technical knowledge is better than most of our current workmates. Moving to the next sentence, but indicates a transition, so now we'll discuss the candidate's weaknesses. The word starting with S should be she, as we're missing a subject. The word after has is easy to guess. It should be she has some shortcomings or limitations. The word starting with a before well is likely as well, often appearing at the end of a sentence to mean also or to. After based, it should be based on meaning according to. The word after my is long, but should be easy to guess, probably interview, as we're discussing an interviewee. After with, it should be her interview. The H word before. Communication should also be her, a possessive pronoun. The word starting with ski should be skills, interpersonal communication skills. Since there's we use the plural form of skill. We're discussing the candidate's weaknesses, so it should be in the negative form, are not strong. So the word starting with N is not. But the last word to fill in, starting with stre, doesn't match the spelling of strong. And there's an article before it, so it should be a noun. What's the noun form of strong? Strength. All right, we've completed this question. As you can see, when doing this type of question, understanding the context is crucial. Remember, read first, then fill in the blanks. Are there other methods that can help us solve these questions? Let's continue our explanation. In every exam, the probability of encountering unfamiliar words is quite high. For reading comprehension and fill in the blank questions, guessing word meanings becomes a necessary step. So, if you come across unknown words or phrases while solving problems, try to infer their general meaning from root words, affixes, parts of speech, synonyms, antonyms, and so on. Also, consider if they might be related to the word you need to fill in. Let's look at this example and see how we can approach it. First, the title of the article is Threats to Chimpanzees in Africa. We know threat means danger or risk, but if you don't recognize chimpanzees, you can set it aside for now. Let's try to translate this title. It's about threats to see in Africa. Threats is plural, indicating there's more than one threat. Remember our problem-solving steps? Read first, then fill in the blanks. Good. Let's look at the article. The first sentence says, the biggest threats to the common chimpanzee are habitat destruction, poaching, and disease. This gives us crucial information to narrow down what C might be. Habitat and disease suggest that C could be a plant or animal. If you don't know destruction, think of a word like construction. We know con as a prefix means together. Struct means build or pile up, and ion is a suffix indicating an action or process. Now replace con with which means down or away, so we can roughly understand habitat destruction as damage to living areas. Given this context, poaching is likely not a positive term and probably refers to something threatening to see. Looking at the last sentence, while deforestation rates are low in Western Central Africa, selective logging may be done outside national parks. We see deforestation, forest means woods, and we've explained ion. The means removal, so deforestation means cutting down forests. Log means to cut trees, so this refers to tree cutting in Central Africa. At this point, C is most likely an animal. If it were a plant, we'd probably see mentions of climate, weather, or sea being cut down. But we don't see that. We also see the word population in the article, which can refer to a group of organisms. Based on this understanding, let's start filling in the blanks. The first word to fill in comes after chimpanzee and starts with habi. Is it in the article? Yes, it's in the first sentence, habitat. From have that follows, we can deduce it should be plural, habitats. What comes after have? We see limited, but habitats can't actively perform an action, right? So this should be in passive voice, and it's in the present perfect tense, indicating a result or consequence. Therefore, we fill in bin. After limited, it should be by. Next, we have words before and after both. Notice at the end of the sentence, we see in Central Africa. Central Africa is a place name and indicates a parallel structure, so the word before it should be west. Therefore, the word before both should be the preposition in. The word after road, starting with bill, is easily guessed as building. The word after has starting with ka should be a past participle. As it's in the present perfect, it's caused. How has it affected the habitat? These two words are quite difficult, so let's leave them for now. Moving on, we should fill in chimpanzee, which is in the article. Before may, it should be in to indicate a parallel structure. We see poacher, which must be the person doing the poaching mentioned earlier, right? It's a word ending in similar to teaching and teacher. But this poacher isn't doing anything good. What about the word starting with al? Think about it, we're talking about road building, so it should be allow. Now that there are roads, it's more convenient for them to poach, so we should fill in more access to areas. The word starting with th should be that. How do we deduce this? It's a relative clause, and that is a relative pronoun. The word starting with and after had should be not. After been, we need an adverb modifying the verb affected, so fill in seriously. The last one is by because it's in passive voice. Now, let's look at the two long words in the middle. We said this sentence is about road construction. If we build roads in the habitats where these animals live, won't it divide their habitats? Certainly. The word starting with fragme is easily guessed as fragment, meaning piece or part, but there aren't enough letters. Could it be fragmentation? Yes, the letter count matches perfectly. This word means breaking into pieces and can be translated here as fragmentation. What about the word starting with degra? It should be degradation. Habitat degradation can be translated as deterioration of living environment. This phrase is often used to describe the process of natural environment quality decline, which may be due to natural processes like drought, heat, and cold, or human activities such as forestry, agriculture, and urbanization. This degradation may cause the natural habitat that originally supported native species to become unsuitable for their survival. All right, we've completed the question. But notice that I haven't explained the meanings of poach and chimpanzee all along. They mean illegal hunting and a type of great ape, respectively. So, during the exam, if there are some words you don't know the meaning of, don't panic. You can make reasonable guesses. Next, let's look at how to apply grammatical rules. First, we can determine the role a word plays in a sentence by observing its position. This helps us narrow down the possible parts of speech, limiting our options. For instance, if the word to be filled is at the beginning of a sentence, it's likely to be the subject or part of the subject. In this case, it's highly probable that it's a noun or pronoun. The following table lists common parts of speech corresponding to different sentence components. You might want to take a screenshot of this for future reference. Next, let's proceed to look at some example questions. By reading the title, we can see that this article is about online anonymity. Let's start by reading the first and last sentences. The first sentence says, being anonymous means not to expose distinguishing features that would permit an onlooker, casual as well as intentional, to identify the observed subject or party. This means that anonymity involves not revealing characteristics that would allow observers, whether accidental or intentional, to identify the subject or party being observed. The last sentence reads, anonymity differs from encryption in that it obscures a user's identity rather than ciphering the channel of communication, though the latter is often a technical means to achieve the ends of the former. This can be translated as, anonymity is different from encryption in that it hides the user's identity rather than encoding the communication channel, although the latter is often used as a technical means to achieve the goals of the former. It discusses methods of anonymity and the difference between anonymity and encryption. Let's quickly look at the blanks in the middle. What parts of speech are we dealing with? We have connecting adverbial phrases, predicate verbs, nouns serving as subjects, adjectives serving as attributes, prepositional phrases, nouns serving as objects, relative pronouns, auxiliary verbs, and so on. Now let's look at the question. For the first blank, we need a connecting adverbial phrase which should be as far as. The word starting with I is. The subject following it is the noun anonymity. Next, we need a predicate verb. Since it's explaining something, we fill in means, remembering to use the third person singular form. Moving on, we have an adjective serving as an attribute, so we fill in responsible. Next is a prepositional phrase, where o should be the preposition of. Continuing, we have an object, which is a noun related to networks, so we fill in net. The next blank needs a predicate verb, so we use identified, followed by can and be. After that, we need an object complement, which is the adjective accountable. Finally, we have the relative pronoun what and the auxiliary verb been. That completes this question. If you think analyzing sentence components might be too time-consuming during an exam, we can also learn some common word collocations. This can help you determine the part of speech for the word you need to fill in, narrowing down your options. The table below lists common word collocations. For example, adverb plus adjective and adverb plus verb combinations are very common in sentences. You might want to take a screenshot of this table for future reference. Let's look at the next question. First, we'll read the title, Ibai and Marty's New York Dream. This might be a story about overcoming challenges or striving for success. Let's examine the first and last sentences. The first sentence says, Ibai knew he wanted to live in New York City someday, but he couldn't afford that yet, so he rented an affordable apartment in a different city across the river. The last sentence reads, Together, Ibai and Marty were eventually able to save up enough money to afford an apartment in New York. It seems to have a happy ending, so this is likely an inspiring story. Looking at the rest of the article, we can find many common word collocations, such as adjective plus noun, possessive pronoun plus noun, to-do infinitives, preposition plus noun, and so on. Let's try to fill in the blanks. First is worked. They need to work to earn money, right? You see earn later too. After long should be hours. We can see this in the second to last sentence. What do you do with money you earn? You save it. So we fill in saved. After most, we need a preposition. So it's the word after his should be earnings, referring to a buy's income or wages. After hoping, we add after one is day, meaning someday. After be should be able, we're testing the phrase be able to, which means can. Next should be afford, meaning to be able to pay for something. Before New York, we need the preposition in. After his should be roommate. Before friend should be best. Then we have had. Why not has? Note that the entire passage is in past tense. Before goals should be similar, as their goals were alike. Then we have so, and also. Before hours is long, which we've seen before. Before his should be the preposition at, followed by own. That completes this question. We've covered the methods for solving these questions. Now let's practice with some examples. Let's look at the first question. You might want to pause the video at this point and try to complete the question independently. All right, welcome back. Let's look at this question together. The title is The Difference Between Concrete and Cement. The first sentence says, thinking concrete and cement are the same thing as common because they are often used interchangeably. The last sentence reads, cement is used to harden a mixture of crushed rock, sand, water, and other materials to create concrete. From this, we can deduce that the article is about the differences between concrete and cement. Let's start filling in the blanks. For the first one, should it be is, in, or it? Looking ahead, we see a long word starting with construction, which is likely construction. Why? Because cement and concrete are both construction materials. That's easy to guess. The opening sentence says people often confuse the two, but here we have however, and later we see the word different, indicating that these two are indeed different. So we can infer that in the construction field, these two need to be distinguished. Therefore, it should be in the, how do we say field? It could be field or area, but it's a word starting with W, so it's world, which works better here. After this should be then very. After different should be materials, construction materials, right? But we need the plural form here. Check the number of spaces, it fits perfectly. Moving on, we're stating facts, so here it is, then made from. What materials? After combination, we fill in of. For the materials, look at the last sentence, so it's sand, rock, and cement. Next, It is often an adverb of frequency is followed by a verb, so used. This is in passive voice. Then we have a to-do infinitive, which should be making walls. That completes this question. Let's move on to the next question. You may want to pause the video at this point and try to complete the question on your own. All right, welcome back. Let's look at the question. The title is Exploring the Field of Linguistics. The first sentence says, the scientific study of language is called linguistics. This gives us the definition of linguistics. The last sentence reads, linguists often work as professors, translators, interpreters, or in industry settings. This tells us about the work areas for linguists. Let's look at the parts we need to fill in. After people, it should be who, a relative pronoun. Then linguistics, which is in the article, so we can fill that in directly. Focus on is a fixed phrase. After different, it's that field we talked about earlier when solving questions, called area. Here it should be plural, areas. After range, it should be from to indicate a range. Then we have sounds of languages. Next, T should be filled with the following the same structure as before. Before language is of meaning of something, and after it is in. After social, we have cont. It can't be contacts because that means people you know, which doesn't fit the context. It should be context, meaning background or setting. Now it makes sense. Moving on, before linguists, the word starting with ma should be many. SP is the verb speak, and after multiple is languages, meaning many linguists can speak multiple languages. Further down, before not should be is. Requi should be requirement, followed by pursue and career, translating to pursuing this career. This tests your knowledge of phrases. All right, we've completed this question. Let's move on to the next question. You might want to pause the video at this point and try to complete the question independently. All right, welcome back. Following our previous approach to solving questions, let's look at this one. The title is Types of Fossil Fuels. The first sentence reads, fossil fuels were formed in the earth hundreds of millions of years ago and have many uses today. This briefly introduces fossil fuels as fuels formed millions of years ago that we still use today. The last sentence says, today, people use it for a wide range of products, including gasoline for transportation and oil for heating. From this, we can gather that the passage is an introduction to fossil fuels, likely covering their types and uses. Now let's fill in the blanks. Since we're introducing or explaining something, the first word should be term, meaning terminology. It's explaining what fossil means. Next is refers to, which we can translate as means or indicates. This tests our knowledge of phrases. The word starting with T is the indicating something specific. Then of, meaning of something, followed by and to show a parallel structure. Next is from which is equivalent to where but more formal. Before the noun resources, we need a pronoun, so these. Then we have a passive structure, so fill in were. For tie. Looking at the title, we can fill in type. Before used, we need an adverb, so widely. Before fuel, right fossil, it's in the original text, so we can use it directly. Then we have is before petroleum. Before mixture, we need liquid, it's oil, right? Next, we have the relative pronoun that. Before known as we put also, meaning also called crude oil. O should be oil, which together gives us what we call crude oil. After early, the word starting with civil should be civilization. We've seen petroleum in the text before, so we can write it. The word starting with E is in the last sentence too. It should be heat. That completes this question. All right, now let's look at the final question. You might want to pause the video at this point and try to complete the question on your own. All right, welcome back. Let's look at the question. The title is Enacting Positive Social Transformation, which suggests this isn't going to be a simple topic. Let's examine the first and last sentences. The first sentence reads, a social movement is a lasting change in social behavior that results from an organized and sustained effort by a large number of people to promote specific ideas or values to improve the society they live in. This defines what a social movement is and its purpose. The last sentence states, these changes can be considered part of a larger social transformation. This puts the concept into a broader context. All right, let's look at the words we need to fill in. First, between in and to, we have a word starting with addy. This should be addition. Did everyone get that? In addition to means furthermore or moreover. The second word should be changing. Note that change doesn't form an infinitive with the previous to be mindful of proper sentence breaks. Next, we should fill in social. Why? It's in the first sentence, so we can use it directly. Moving on, we need to add a verb here. Brings, using the third-person singular form. What comes after about? Is it social? There seem to be extra spaces. What about society? That doesn't seem right either. The correct answer is societal, meaning relating to society, which pairs well with change to emphasize overall social change. This is a reminder that consistently expanding your vocabulary is an excellent way to tackle reading comprehension questions. When you encounter new words during practice, make sure to memorize and master them. Continuing on after its advo should be advocates, meaning proponents or supporters. After often, we need a verb, so it's view. Then AI should be the noun aims in plural form. The two long words that follow should be the adjectives progressive and necessary. Before existing, we should have the indicating specificity. After that is circumstances, referring to conditions or situations. Great! With that, we've completed the question. That concludes our lesson for today. We'd love for you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, give us a like, or share our content. Don't forget to use the special link in the pinned comment to sign up for a DET practice account. This will give you 1 day of unlimited access to our test question bank and 2 AI-powered speaking or writing evaluations. See you in our next lesson. Bye for now.